topic.
Hey, Cindy, how are you doing?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It's a beautiful day. And I want to welcome everybody to the latest episode 5 of Mission Control. And today we're going to be talking with some friends of mine from the Hospice of Lansing. And we're going to be really delving into something that they face on a daily basis, and it is having difficult conversations with the folks that they work with. But I want to welcome Cindy. Cindy's with Ellie's Place, and she is somebody who also knows about working with a community that has where you have to have a difficult conversation. So talk to me about how you approach it, and then we're going to delve into Hospice of Lansing in a little bit.
Well, I think the key word, whenever you're having a difficult conversation, is empathy, and not necessarily giving advice or stepping in. It's just listening and listening to understand, and just letting someone know, I'm sitting with you through whatever you're going through. Empathy is a key word. And I try to think about, as I knew the topic was difficult conversations, we could probably go off on all kinds of tangents about what that constitutes. I think a lot about, diversity and inclusion, and learning about people of different backgrounds from ourselves, and how that's oftentimes a very awkward conversation. I think about, sex and sex related conversations. And sometimes people are very embarrassed to talk about that. And we had our friend Lisney on not too long ago, and her nonprofit is based on getting feminine products into the hands of those that need it, and oftentimes that's a very awkward conversation. So there are multiple conversations that we could have that are difficult, and you have to really be tactful and empathetic when you are speaking about those things. And death is just another one of those things, and it's painful. And I think a lot of people don't want to think about their mortality or talk about it or acknowledge it, even with other people. And I think that also, if you think about when you go to a funeral, or a friend of yours dies, or someone that close to you dies, trying to find the right words is hard. Like, what do you say? What is appropriate to say? And so then you add that into, this nonprofit realm where we're talking about it on a daily basis. Yes, death sooner or later is going to touch all of us. We should be able to have conversations about it, and not conversations that are scary, maybe conversations that open your mind up a little bit.
I think that's really, really key. And one of the things that you mentioned right at the top is being empathic, having that empathy with the folks that you have to have these discussions with. Taking it from my standpoint and what we do here and what my company does, one of the main things that we talk about right off the bat with our interns and with anybody who comes is the fact that we do work with folks in which we cover a lot of difficult and sensitive topics. So you have to listen to what's being said and make sure that that you're not injecting yourself into a situation that can make it awkward for everyone. One of another story that I had in this regard was when we worked with Elder Law of Michigan on a situation where somebody just lost his loved one after 20 some plus years, and he had to go through all this legal stuff. And we didn't know that he agreed to do this interview 2 weeks after that she passed, but he had that kind of strength to do it. And so I was like, this guy's my hero, because I don't know how you can sit down and talk about all this without, and I think that that's part of that discussion situation in which you have to have that empathy in going in and trying to understand where folks are. And I think that's really key for you, what you do and what Hospice of Lansing does. And I think enough talking about what we know. Let's bring on our guest. What do you think?
Sure.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, stay tuned we're going to listen to Heather. Hey, Heather.
Hey,
How
hi
you
guys.
doing?
How are you?
We're good. Welcome to the
Good.
show. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, before we even start going into the whole thing, let's introduce you, or
Okay.
let me have you introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? Talk a little bit about where you're at, and yeah, we'll just start right there.
Okay, great. My name is Heather Vida, and I am the Director of Fund Development at Hospice of Lansing and Stoneleigh residents. I have been with them for over 8 years now. And I work more of the fundraising side of the house. So we are a nonprofit organization. We're the only community-based, standalone hospice in the area. And it's something that I'm very proud to work for. And we have a lot of difficult questions, a lot of difficult conversations. So definitely in the vein of what you guys are talking about, for sure. Prior to that, I've been in fundraising. My mom would have said since birth, because that's just my background and who I am, and working with nonprofits in different sector, in social services and higher education and the religious organizations and so forth. So I've traveled all around the country working with different organizations in my former job, and was happy to land here in Lansing and be able to work locally and actually see some impact of the work that I do. So, and honestly, Paul, I do not do it alone. We have an incredible team, I am on their administrative side of Hospice of Lansing. There's a huge clinical team that is a part of every day of what we do. And I couldn't do my job unless they did their job, and working together is really what makes a difference in our families' lives.
Well, I like the fact that you have this long history of working in the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
But working in the nonprofit world is one thing, and working in organizations such as what you and Cindy represent is something else, because it's a whole different mindset. How did you manage to land in a hospice? What triggered you to, not just because everybody's heard of what a hospice does,
Sure,
and what they do, but
Sure.
you decided to work for one. How did you come to that decision? How'd you get there?
So I've actually had several personal experiences with hospice. But my very first one was actually when I was back in college, and my aunt was dying of breast cancer. And our hospice nurse was there working with us. And my mom and her would fight all the time about the fact that my aunt wasn't eating. And it was just this ongoing argument. And finally, it was our hospice nurse who pulled us aside, and she said, I really want you to listen to something, and this is going to be hard. It might be hard to hear, but your sister is not dying because she's not eating. Your sister isn't eating because she is dying.
Right.
And that is dramatically different. And she said to us, I want you to hear this, and I really want you to process this, because it's a different kind of conversation that you guys can have now. I know you want her to eat, the muffin or a bagel or something like that for breakfast. But unfortunately, where we're at right now, that's not going to change our situation. But what it will do is actually stop you guys from arguing, and stop you from fighting, and stop you from doing those little things. She's like, just enjoy her. If she wants to eat, she will. If she doesn't, then that's okay. And that was a huge turning point in what was happening, and for all of our family to just sit down and really think about that, because we were all trying to do all these other little things, right? Because death is hard. It's really hard, and surrounding yourself with the right people to make sure that you understand what's happening. And I credit our hospice nurse for really helping us walk through that process. And a few years later, my grandparents Both of them, we worked with them for hospice. And honestly, just recently, in the last few years, my mom passed away and we worked with hospice team for her. And I will tell you, she had the best 6 months of her life in a decade because of our hospice team. She looked great. They had to call to say, "Are you going to be home? We need to come check on you." Because she wasn't in that kind of that medical back and forth in the hospital, in rehab, trying to fix her. No, it's not going to work. Because at the end of the day, she was still terminal and she still had cancer. So it was one of those things that we really had to sit down and have some conversations. But I tell you what, it changed our family for those 6 months and gave us this peace that you can't trade. And that really shaped my direction and who I am and why hospice was so important to me. And I continue to do so.
Oh, I'm so thankful that you shared your story. It's interesting how that nurse and how you and I probably on a regular basis kind of have to flip the script a little bit, because people will say, "I don't know how you can do what you do," or "Isn't it bad to go to your job every day?" And I think, well, no, because, I'm walking with these people on their journey and I'm giving them, potentially a better quality of life or the tools that they need to get through whatever it is they're going through. So I'm wondering if you could share some of the verbiage that you use when people say to you, how do you do it on a daily basis? Or how is it not sad? Or how can we have these conversations? What are some tips that you have for people?
You know what, Cindy, it's one of those things that I will agree with people that it can be incredibly sad. Absolutely. Something is happening that you don't want to have happen, but the reality is it's going to happen to all of us.
Right.
So really embracing that time to talk, to have forgiveness, to have those moments. I'm honestly honored a lot of times to be there with family members and to talk with them. And to be on that journey and explain to them, or as much as you can, because, everybody has a different journey to go on, that it's not about getting over someone or moving on to the next chapter. It's really about going through it, going through grief and understanding that it's more like the ocean. They're like waves. Some days are going to be absolutely amazing and it's a beautiful day and the tide's pulled out. And then other days you are doggy paddling for air because that wave has come on top of you. And that's, what you do. You just help people and just tell them they're not alone. They're not alone and we're here to do it. And it's an honor to be able to help people out that way.
That's amazing. You're right. Grief is not linear.
No.
Waves.
No.
And everybody experiences grief in different ways.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like I've taken several tours. And for those of you that have never visited the Stoneleigh residence of hospice, I strongly encourage you to take a tour, because I left there feeling empowered, and my heart was just full, because it was a positive, loving place.
And I'm so glad you said that, Cindy, because the one thing that I would like to share is that hospice, we do have our hospice house. We have Stoneleigh residents, so we do have a place. But actually, really, when you look at hospice overall, it really is a service. It's almost like a specialty, because we can actually offer hospice at home too. And actually, most of our patients are at home. They want to stay home. Yeah. And sometimes home is wherever that is. Maybe it's at their daughter's house. Maybe it's their own home. Maybe it's an assisted living. But we go to where they're at. But we are lucky to have a place like Stoneleigh residence too. Most people actually don't even know that place exists until they need to.
Yeah.
And then it becomes their lifeblood. I mean, it's in a little hidden gem in South Lansing that is just down that hill.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I know that you mentioned at the beginning of the segment that you're the only independent nonprofit hospice. Is having Stoneleigh part of that process, or how do you differentiate yourself from the other hospices?
Well, we actually have the nonprofit status in our area right now, like in our Tri-County area, if you will. There are 14 different hospice organizations. 3 of us are actually nonprofit, but the other 2 nonprofits are actually affiliated with the hospitals. So it's Sparrow and McLaren's hospice organizations. So Hospice of Lansing, Stoneleigh residence is really one organization, even though Stoneleigh is a building. Hospice really is the parent company, if you will. Hospice of Lansing is. So we are the same team. We work together in tandem. So our nurses cross over at times, our aides, our medical director, and our nurse practitioners, they are actually cross over to Stoneleigh residents and our in-home patients and actually make home visits. Our medical director, Dr. LaBerge, is absolutely amazing. He's got the black bag and everything and comes to the house and sits down with the family. And that makes us unique in a very different way because actually not all of the hospices work that way. We're truly patient focused. Our nurses and our aides don't go off of a schedule per se that dictates when they have to be there. It is based on what the needs of the patient are. And the other organizations that exist in the area, it's not that they're not good. They just run things a little bit differently. They have shareholders. They have different people that they need to answer to. We answer to our patients. We answer to our families. So we do have the luxury to really dictate how that works and what is best for them. And at times it can be really tough because, we do get reimbursement from Medicaid, Medicare, and insurance. However, as with everything insurance, it never truly covers the cost of care, right?
Right. So,
even just the mileage alone, which is, I think, our third highest number in our budget. I mean, we're putting out $200,000 a year alone to pay for mileage reimbursement for our nurses and for our team because of the sheer windshield time that they cover. And that's a pretty chunk. There's a pretty big chunk, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so no matter what the patient we have, is going through, whatever their diagnosis is, whatever their needs are, you have a set rate of reimbursement. So someone's medications or someone's items may cost in thousands of dollars, where someone else may only cost $200. So you've learned to kind of balance it out. But that's where my role comes in too, as the director of development, to help raise some funds for a lot of the other services that we have, that we offer, that some of the other private hospices can't or just don't.
Awesome. Well, you know what? Now that we've talked a little bit about the who, I think we're going to get into this next session with with your guest, Kathy, who's also a colleague and staff member with you, talking a little bit more about the why you do what you do. So stay tuned after this. And here we are. We're back. And we bring in Kathy from Hospice of Lansing. And before we start with this segment, Kathy, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do at Hospice on a day-to-day?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kathy Mrozinski, and I am Community Relations for Hospice of Lansing and Stoneleigh residents. My job as Community Relations includes a lot of marketing. I actually usually go out and do visits to the different senior communities, to health fairs, and any educational opportunities we have to work with the community. But with the state of things right now, I am not traveling to those senior communities. So we're doing a lot of Zoom visits, a lot of phone calls and emails to just continually build relationships and gain referrals for Hospice of Lansing and Stoneleigh residents. Really, truly, so that we can provide those people with the best end of life care. And so that, as well as some of the marketing pieces with advertising and working with the clinical team and kind of being a liaison between senior communities and our clinical team, is mostly what I do.
Awesome.
Heather mentioned a little bit about your amazing staff, and I've met a few of them. And so I'm wondering, when you go out, if you could just share some of the things that you share about, your staff members and how wonderful they are, and even some of the unique therapies that you use that people may not see in other hospices.
Yes, for sure. So with Hospice of Lansing, we have been doing end of life for over 40 years. It's now over 41. And we truly are experts in our field. The only thing we do is hospice care. We don't have multiple different home care and private duty and all of these different pieces like other agencies do. We really specialize in hospice. And so when I go out and I talk to people, I let them know that our team is very much into customizing our care to that person that needs hospice. It really is all about them. It's about what is going on in their life, in their journey, and what is going to bring them the quality of life. And so it's really very much about the families and the patients that we're working with. We talk a lot about our team. We have some amazing, as Heather mentioned, some amazing team members, from nurses to aides to social work to our chaplain to our on-call nurses and volunteers. We are unique in a way that we have two amazing medical directors. We have Dr. LaBerge, as Heather mentioned, but we also have Dr. Sheila Jendek. And they do go out and make visits. They're very much involved in the care of everyone on our service. And they really truly believe in that quality of life and doing whatever's needed, whether it's a homeopathic treatment or it may be medications. We truly go at it from all angles because not every person is the same and not every person wants the same thing. So for us, we find it really important to treat the entire person, not just their diagnosis. So we do offer music therapy and massage therapy, and they're uniquely trained for exactly this, for those people that are going through end of life. It's amazing what those therapies can do for people. We had an instance with music therapy with someone with Alzheimer's, and they really did not communicate. They really didn't do much. But Jenny went in and kind of found out some of their favorite genres, started playing, and you got the foot tapping and the head bopping, and eventually started singing along. And that just gives me chills. Music touches a different part of the brain than even speaking or touch. And so it's very important to provide that therapy, and all hospices do. And the same with massage therapy. Our massage therapist is specially trained with end-of-life diseases. So she knows exactly how she can work in touch with someone so that it doesn't bring pain, that it can bring relief. And a lot of times using music and massage therapy, you can reduce the use of medications with the aromatherapy used along with it. And so we just really truly feel that it's all about quality of life. So if music and massage are going to help that and bring that person out, then they got it.
Yeah.
Well, now the theme of the show, first of all, I want to comment on the numerous myriad of services that you guys provide. I think it's incredible and it's just needed and necessary. But between what you guys do, your specific positions at hospice, you interface with the public all the time. And the theme of this program especially is having those difficult discussions. And out of anybody on your staff, well, I don't want to say anybody, but I mean, being the public face for what you guys do, how do you approach this? What is your tactic? I mean, because it's the conversations that you have to have are probably not what most people want to talk about at that point in time, especially when, Heather, your role is, the fundraising aspect. Kathy, your role is the marketing aspect. And it's all right, how do we develop materials that people can embrace and have these conversations around, or even getting testimonials, because it's a huge aspect of trying to promote and market what you guys are doing and needing. How do you generate? I don't know if I asked 15,000 questions just in this one bit, but hey, we're just going to go with that. I don't care who goes first, but it's how are you guys prepping yourselves to be able to do this, out in the public?
Honestly, the big thing is, Paul, is patience. It doesn't matter what you ask someone, it may not be the right question. And other times you may ask the perfect question and then they just share everything. Kathy and I have been at community engagements together where people have physically backed away from us.
I was just going to mention that before I blipped out. Yeah.
Yeah. They were
our older friend and backed up. They literally did. And we just went, I think we need to talk.
No.
I think we need to have a conversation. Heather even said, we're not here for you.
I said, no, we're not here like that. We're not here for you. It's not like that at all. Like I was trying to, because she was so exasperated. So yeah, that's exactly what I said.
And I'll
so again, it may not have been the right thing to say, but that was my reaction of like, no, it's okay.
Yeah, we were just introducing ourselves, and they really were like, oh my goodness. And that just means that there needs to be a conversation,
Yes.
just a very simple, lighthearted conversation, because hospice has changed so much over the years, and it's not the same. And a lot of the generations we're working with are starting to see that it's not the same. But sometimes we do get those people that are like, absolutely not. If I go on hospice, I'm going to die tomorrow. And that really is not the case. We know that. No. But they don't know that because that's how hospice was. And that's, people waited until the very last minute. And now it's just getting it out there that you don't have to wait until the last minute. You can actually have a better quality of life, like Heather's mom did, on hospice for as long as you qualify. There is no time limit, as long as you meet, of course, the requirements, from Medicare. So yeah, I was gonna mention that story with Heather.
Yeah, I was saying. When I had one thing on the flip side, I was grocery shopping. This is pre-pandemic, but I was grocery shopping, and I had just come from work, and I saw my name tag or it's my jacket or something on it had identified who I was. And the cashier looked at me and stops, and she's like, "Can I please just give you a hug? I just need to give you a hug." And I'm thinking to myself, okay. I'm like, are we on a camera? Like, what are you doing? And she's like, what you did for my family, well, maybe not you personally, but what you do for families and everything she's like, you have no idea, and just need to say thank you. So you have that flip side of, this complete stranger who I've never seen again, probably never will. But like in the middle of the grocery store, and she was checking out my groceries, wanted to give me a hug and say thank you. So, you do cover the gamut. And, to go back to maybe one or two of your questions, Paul, trying to talk to people, about giving testimonials really is in their own time. I mean, I've had several people where I've asked them, like, do you think, you're ready to do this? And they will look at me and straight out say, nope. And, a couple of people looked at me and said, never. I can't keep myself composed. And then there's other people who are like, sign me up. Like, what can I do for you guys? I want to shout from the rooftops what you did for my family. So you have to ask, and you just have to talk to them, and then realize that everybody, as Cindy and I already commented earlier about, grief is a different journey for everyone, and everybody's going to be at a different place. So we've had people that, we've taken care of 10 years ago that have like come forward and said, hey, I want to do my testimonial now. And we've had people whose, loved one passed away a couple months prior to, and are ready to stand up in front of a group of people and talk. So,
yeah. And I think our team, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you have tips for the average person to have these conversations at home with their own families, because I think it's so important for us to share what our wishes are and have these open conversations with family members. So I'm hoping that you can give us a few tips or talking points or ways that we can encourage those conversations to happen.
For sure. We talk a lot, like when I go out to senior communities, especially independent livings, where people are, in their 60s and a little older, I tend to bring up that talking with your family is never easy. Hardly as ever easy, but it's necessary. Do they know your wishes? Mm-hmm. Do they know, do you want to remain at home? Do you want to move someplace? Do you want to move in with them? Like, do they know? Because if there is a crisis tomorrow and you're not able to tell them, then they have to just guess and try to do what's best. And not only is it stressful for you, it's stressful for them. Funeral pre-planning, I'm always an advocate of that as well. When my aunt passed away at 64, she said she was going to do it when she turned 65. And then when hospice came, and she was about a year after that, she did pre-plan her funeral about a month before she passed. And we were all so devastated and grieving that it was so helpful that that was planned and that we knew her wishes for her service and burial and things like that. But for me, when I go out and talk to people, it's really just educating that it's a hard conversation. If you can't have the physical conversation because it's too difficult, then write it down. There's a really great free book called 5 Wishes that's super simple, and it walks through, thank you, Heather. It walks through not only your medical decisions, but as I say, it gets more emotional towards the end and talks about what do you want. For example, do you want to have chapstick put on your lips if you're not able to, request it? And Heather will say yes, but don't make it Carmex because I hate Carmex chapstick.
Yeah.
So
I filled this out with my husband.
Yeah.
And we answered the questions, and I was like, you better not put Carmex on me. So, I mean, and I wrote notes all over in the margin, but
yeah.
I mean, there are questions all the way down to, what do you want at your funeral? Do you want to be cremated or buried? Like those kind of things, like stuff that you don't think about.
Life-saving measures. There's the clinical aspect of it too. And it is a legal document in Michigan. And if your wishes change, you cross them out or rip it up and do a new one. But it is a legal document in Michigan. And so we do hassle it out a lot and go through them, because if you can't have that conversation, then you can write it down and give them a copy, give your doctor a copy, things like that. It even depicts your health advocate, which is super important if you don't have a power of attorney in place. This doesn't replace a power of attorney, but
or a will.
Help.
Or a will. We need to make sure people know that this is not in lieu of a will by any means. This is strictly just talking about your wishes or what you want.
Yeah. And it's really just being honest. I mean, we really pride ourselves, and our team does, on being honest and really just letting people know what's going on right now. Where are they at? But of course, do that in an empathetic nature. We don't just blurt it out, but you read the room, you figure out, when the daughter's a nurse, there's always a daughter that's a nurse. You can talk to her differently than you can talk to the other daughter who's a different occupation, most of the time. So it's really just, being a chameleon and where you're at in changing the way that you talk, based on who you're with. Because you want to get through it and really reach, every individual person that's involved. Because it isn't just about the patient, it's about the entire family, because the family's supporting that patient. That's kind of how we work in talking with people and breaking that, mold of hospice is, scary.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we got to wrap up the show, but the 5 wishes aspect, where can folks get that?
So if you head up to our website, and you'll find it under resources, we'll have a link to that. It'll actually link out to the website where you can get it. Or if you go through our contact page, and you can request 5 wishes, we can mail it right to you. So we have the books in the office and we can mail them right to you. So either way.
That's great. And also don't forget to check out Hospice of Lansing on Facebook as well. And Heather, Kathy, this was a wonderful conversation. We really enjoyed what you guys had to say and your perspectives on it. Thank you for joining us on this program. Really appreciate it. And
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
And that brings us to a close of another edition of Mission Control. Anything else you'd like to add, Cindy?
No, I love this team of people. I mean, they're some of my favorite humans, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for all that they do. They're great. And so again, I encourage you to, reach out to them, support them in any way you can, and take a tour if you're available to take a tour. They're amazing.
I completely agree with that. The Stoneleigh residence is awesome. Take a tour, contact hospice, learn a little bit more, and don't be afraid to have these difficult conversations. It's the best for yourself and your family. And on behalf of Cindy Kangas, I'm Paul Schmidt, the host of Mission Control. Thank you for watching. See you next time.